when God's Son took on human flesh in the incarnation, God experienced physical exhaustion for the first time. Think about that for a minute. According to his divine nature, God is all-powerful, which means he never grows weary. He never slumbers or sleeps. He is always ready to go. But according to his human nature, he had to stop working from time to time and close his weary eyes in rest. This was a necessary part of his fulfilling all righteousness for us, since he had to be made like his brothers in every respect, yet without sin, so that he might become a merciful and faithful high priest in the presence of the service of God to make propitiation for the sins of the people, or so says the letter to the Hebrews. An event that most beautifully illustrates the two natures of Christ is when, during a storm, Jesus is soundly asleep in the stern of the boat. Now, these are experienced fishermen, most of them. Storms on the Sea of Galilee are common. These are experienced oarsmen and sailors. They know how to handle a boat in the waves. And yet, as the storm continues to kick up and the boat begins to fill with water, the panicked disciples freak out and wake Jesus up. Now imagine how tired you must be to sleep in the back of a boat that's in that much of a storm. And Jesus, by his word, rebukes the wind and the waves and simply says, "Peace, be still." And according to his divine nature, he had the power and authority to restore those troubled waters to a state of rest. According to his human nature, he needed physical rest. Jesus truly was the God-man. And this is, if we're honest, a paradox that we cannot fully understand. And it was necessary for our salvation, since only a man can die, and only God's death in the flesh would atone for the sin of the whole world. Now, yesterday we observed God the Son closing his eyes in death. St. Mark identifies there 3 women who rested their eyes on this unthinkable tragedy. Their beloved teacher, their Lord, was dead. And they could see nothing else to do than to provide a proper burial for his body. But how could 3 Galilean women do that? Well, thanks be to God, they didn't have to do it. Joseph of Arimathea used his influential position to obtain the body of Jesus from Pilate, and then donated his own tomb, newly hewn from the rock, and then he donated a new linen shroud to cover Jesus' wounded, bleeding, and beaten body, dressing it like a wound, that they might lay him in the tomb. But from what the 2 Marys and Salome observed, Jesus' body had not been anointed with the traditional spices, and so they planned to return. Of course, after the Sabbath, because you weren't allowed to work on the Sabbath. And so the 3rd day they would come back and finish the work. But as they rested their eyes on the sealed tomb, the women could not see two important factors about Jesus' body laying behind the stone in the tomb. First, they did not recognize that Jesus' body had already been anointed for burial by another woman. Do you remember all the way back to Ash Wednesday? We heard of an anonymous woman who crashed a dinner party, hastily broke open an alabaster flask full of a very costly ointment of pure nard and dumped it out on Jesus' head, drenching him. The disciples thought it was a horrible waste. They fussed at her, and Jesus responded, "Leave her alone. Why do you trouble her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body for burial beforehand. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in memory of her." Apparently, the two Marys and Salome either hadn't heard of this event yet, which I doubt, or in the midst of everything that had gone on in the last few days, they simply forgot, which I'm familiar with, forgetting. The second thing that they could not already see about Jesus' body behind the stone in the tomb was that he wouldn't need to be dressed with the right spices for burial, because on the Sabbath day, his body would not be behind the stone in the tomb. On Maundy Thursday, we learned that the Passover and the Old Testament sacrificial system were types, or better, they were shadows of what was to come. That is, of all that Jesus would accomplish. And at the Last Supper and on the cross, he accomplished all of those things for us. They are fulfilled. Their purpose is fulfilled. Tonight, on Holy Saturday, we see the same thing happen with the Sabbath, the day of rest. "6 days shall you labor. The seventh is the Lord's. In 6 days he made the earth and all the heavens, and on the seventh day he rested, and he declared it holy, and he set it aside." Jesus fulfills that perfect Sabbath rest once and for all by bodily resting in the tomb on the seventh day. And then on Easter Sunday, on the 8th day, on the first day of the new creation, he burst forth from the grave, never to die again. Death no longer has dominion over him. And tomorrow morning, we will see the women recognize this based on the testimony of the Easter angel, the one who actually was in the empty tomb, which means it wasn't technically empty. There was an angel in it. But on Good Friday and on Holy Saturday, as their eyes rested on the tomb of Jesus, these women could see nothing but death. Most likely, their eyes were red from weeping, bleary from fatigue. But no matter what their eyes saw, what God the Father saw was rest for his Son after his death for the sin of the world. Was a seventh day of rest because the work of salvation, it is finished. And on the seventh day, he rested. And the third day is just around the corner. And this gives us encouragement here and now. For we who are heavy laden by guilt and wearied by the effects of sin in this creation, we with physical and emotional pain that disrupts our sleep, we who lie awake in bed with worry over ourselves or over our loved ones, we who with eyes heavy laden with tears lay our eyes upon the sealed graves of our family members and our friends who have been laid to rest, we here and now often can see nothing but death. So come. Come this very night and fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross and scorned its shame and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. For this is Jesus who is our Sabbath rest. And he says to you, in the midst of your fatigue, in the midst of your pain, in the midst of your sorrow, come to me. Come to me, all you who are heavy laden, who are labored, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. You see, in Jesus, there is for you, even now, for your soul, and there is for you, for your resurrected body one day, for you who believe and are baptized, there is for you joy. Even though one day you will close your eyes in the sleep of death, there is joy this night. For this night, the Sabbath is fulfilled. And the seventh day, he rested.